Hello there, it's Aki Anastasiou and welcome to another episode of What's Next, and it's a very special edition, What's Next in Banking, and we're coming at you live from Standard Bank's headquarters here in Rosebank, of course the biggest bank in Africa, and they are involved in all sorts of businesses, and I'm very excited to welcome John van Can. John, good to see you. How are you doing?
No, good, thank you. And yourself? All good?
Fantastic, fantastic. Tell me, how is Standard Bank involved in the healthcare sector?
We're very involved. So about 4 years ago, during COVID, I was asked to come across to Standard Bank, where we had a look at what market share we had in the healthcare, because it's an industry that wanted to get involved. And we've taken it from there to a new level, where South Africa now, we've got 18% market share, and we're actually going into Africa now. So healthcare is on top of Standard Bank's agenda.
So when you say you're involved, how does the bank get involved in healthcare?
So we get involved right from your large private hospitals,
okay.
right down to that little nurse, and we make sure that we build them something, a value proposal that will suit both that hospital or that nurse and all the practitioners in between.
And obviously finance hospital growth.
Yes.
If you're a recently qualified doctor, you want to open up your own practice, you'll help fund that sort of thing as well, right?
Now, Aki, that is always a very difficult scenario, because I'm sure you know a bank won't even look at funding a hot dog stand outside if you are starting out.
Yes.
And if you look at from a healthcare practitioner, he's coming from studying for 9 years.
Exactly.
He works 2 years in your public arena, and now he wants to start a private practice. So he's used to a lifestyle of earning between 900 to 1.3 million in the public arena. Now he comes out and he's got zero. Of course, he's got the GTI and he's got the new flat, but he has got nothing to actually say, I can now start a practice.
Yeah.
So we take these guys and we try to mold them and teach them how finances work.
Okay.
They know how to practice, but we know how to finance. And that's where we start working with them, so that we make them successful and get them to become a successful practice.
Because it's running a business, and you
Yes.
run a business effectively. So when you look back at the last 4 years, and we've seen very interesting changes happening since COVID, we've seen, healthcare has adapted quite a bit. What have been the key milestones that Standard Bank has achieved?
So the milestones that we've grown is that Standard Bank wasn't known in the healthcare market. The other banks were known, so we've come into it and we've been able to ensure that we are segmented in the healthcare practitioner world especially, and also your larger hospitals.
Yeah.
A good example is the Smart Summit that we are part of, and also the African Health Summit. We're the only bank that actually goes to the African Health Summit, which is the whole of health in Africa. So it's great. What was so nice this year, which made it totally different, was that our clients and our partners were actually coming to us on the day and saying, well, we've learned from you and doing this, and how can you actually build this next part for us? So it's not just they're coming to us for banking, it's how do we collaborate, how we take their expertise and fund it through our bank to make them successful.
So, well done on the summit. I was the MC at the summit, so it was a fantastic summit. Not because I was the MC, but it was just, the content was so great.
Yes.
And that brings me to my next question, because it's about smart healthcare.
Yes.
And if there's one industry that's adapting super fast to the advancing technologies around us of AI and all of these things that we're seeing, is healthcare. How is the bank adapting to these changes?
So the biggest thing that a bank has to look at, especially Standard Bank, is how are we going to lend into that Pacific market, into the new AI, the robotic market.
Yeah.
And it is tough. We spend a lot of time at the new hospitals. This year alone, we have funded one of the new robotic arms. It's the first one in South Africa, so we seem to be getting it right. We've also done some huge funding into the new kind of CT scanners that you've got first in Africa as well. So it's fantastic. We are taking it on, but it is a lot of research, making sure that it will be the best for the patient and for the hospital before we actually fund them.
Amazing. And the possibilities are endless when you look at remote healthcare, et cetera, and really bringing healthcare to the masses, which we're going to talk about in a second. But when you look at healthcare professionals, you mentioned hospitals and everything, you guys curate and you really do bespoke solutions for healthcare professionals.
Yes.
How does that work? What does Standard Bank do for the healthcare professionals and the healthcare businesses?
So, Aki, first we must go back and you must have a look at what healthcare is all about. It starts with a hospital. Now, the hospital is actually a hotel, if you think about it. You go in there, you get a bed, and you get free food. But now the main attractions in that hotel is the theatre, because you're going to the theatre for a reason.
You make it sound so glamorous.
It is glamorous, especially with what we can do these days. But now to be that hotel that's got the beach and it's got the warm ocean and everything's perfect, you got to then be that hospital that's got the top practitioners that are coming there, the top surgeons, the top specialists, the top machinery. So what we try and marry is when we're working with a hospital group and they're wanting to expand or get new machinery, we first look at who is your specialists, who's going to be cutting people open, who are your practitioners, who's feeding you from the GPs, because you cannot go to a hospital unless a GP has recommended you.
Yeah.
So we start looking from the hospital and then we start breaking down into the ecosystem, right down to that general practitioner. And that's where we start building a value proposal and take it up into the main hospital. So it's looking after the full chain from start to finish.
No, it's fascinating. And to your point, I mean, we were joking earlier, but they are hotels. Because if you look at the quality of healthcare today in the private sector, it's really come a long way. I mean, the food is decent. I mean, these places are literally like hotels.
Yes.
And the equipment that they've got deployed in these, in hospitals, both public and private healthcare, it's expensive stuff. I mean, we've got things like, I remember many years ago going to the launch of the Da Vinci robot, the first one on the continent, and subsequent to that, there have been a few more. Now, these things cost millions and millions and millions of rands. How is the bank adapting to these technological advances and innovations and the rapid change of how often you've got to change equipment? You mentioned the CAT scan earlier, but they're becoming more and more sophisticated, and that requires a lot more funding.
So the basics of, for instance, a CT scanner is the setting up the room, making sure it's safe, etc., because it is dealing with radiation. However, once you pass setting up the room, then it all comes to the program that is actually programmed into the machine. So that gets updated annually. So we call it, you sweat the machine, you can sweat it for 15 years.
Yes.
But when it comes to, like you're saying now, the new machinery coming in, I'm not going to mention any hospitals, but the hospital we've just allocated a new CT scanner to, they were seeing on average 5 patients per hour. Now they're seeing 25 per hour.
That's massive.
So all of a sudden, the machine, which we were happy about, but also disappointed, the machine was paid off in 6 months because of the volume now it was creating. And they were able to actually pinpoint the actual node that had to be actually surgically removed. So your turnaround time is much quicker. You're getting more patients through, and therefore you're making more money.
Well, it's becoming more efficient, isn't it?
Yes.
And even, people that, doctors that look for, irregularities in the blood by using AI, and detecting cancer, for example, it's just adding a lot more efficiency to the system. And that's an extraordinary number, by the way, 25 in an hour, you say, CAT scans. I've never heard of that before.
And it's amazing. And you must see how nice the room looks, how they've made it so when children go in, they don't feel like they're in this horrible big room with this big machine. It's got beautiful colors, the paintings and everything. So it's really come a long way. I love to go and see these new places.
They are amazing. But of course, a machine like that costs a lot of money.
Yes.
But if you put it in the bank, into the hospital, you guys fund that.
Yes.
But the hospital sees the return on investment a lot quicker than what they had. Because, I've heard in some cases it takes 10 years to sweat an asset. 6 months is an extraordinary period.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. And you must remember that in the hospitals, there has been laws that have changed since COVID has come. So one thing that has happened with COVID is that the Health Professional Council South Africa has relaxed laws, medical laws.
Yes.
For instance, once COVID had started, we've had telehealth that came onto being. Telehealth opened a whole new world into the practitioner world, where you as a practitioner can only see 20 patients in a day if you're we call it a leafy suburb.
Right.
Now they could see another 30, 40 in the evening, so they could actually build their balance sheet. It also allowed on the telehealth that we could go into the rural areas where you could have a nurse speaking to a doctor on camera and actually helping a patient. Where we're using it to our advantage is we've got this massive independent pharmacies out there, 1,100 of them, and they're using this to actually generate more income.
Okay.
Because they put a nurse in there, you come through the door, you come see the nurse, you've got flu or whatever, she assists you. If it's something worse, you have a telehealth doctor that sorts you out. But now you're using that pharmacy, you're buying your medication there, etc. So it's boosting that economy in the independent pharmacies.
So, John, what would you say are the challenges that, the facing the healthcare industry there? Maybe the operational challenges, because I think the funding side you guys pretty much understand it and the business model of the funding side. But operationally, when you were talking earlier about the other stuff that you need to put into a hospital or into the healthcare system to make it all work properly, that can also impact everything, because if you've got one cog of those wheels not operating efficiently, then the entire ecosystem is affected. So operationally, what are the big challenges that you guys are seeing at Standard Bank?
Operationally, what we're seeing is delays. So it's delay on getting the equipment into South Africa, getting through regulations, opening the hospital. Also, of course, there's a shortage of funds. Especially when you're looking into your public hospitals. The public hospitals are getting better. However, you still need a lot of money to actually get them up to the standard where they want to be. We have a huge shortage of nurses and doctors, specialists. That causes a huge operational delay, because how can you run a hospital and have the top surgeon there when there are no surgeons?
Right.
So we have that delay. And these are all spinning off different kinds of areas of telehealth, etc., where doctors don't have to go into the office. So you are allowed now, a radiologist who's at the top of his field can sit in Camps Bay, he goes on his screens, he's able to have 6 or 7 practices out in Gauteng, Limpopo, wherever, and he's able to continue his practice. So we are solving for it, but we still need to get there.
So we're talking about the big guys now, the hospital groups, the big groups. But, just like in healthcare, in business, you've got small, medium-sized enterprises.
Yes.
The smaller businesses, the private doctors who've got their little practice there and who are part of a very small healthcare group. How do you support those guys? Because they form a critical part of the health ecosystem, the healthcare ecosystem.
So a private practice is just that. It belongs to one person. It's himself. He's a GP.
Yeah.
So he has now got his business practice. That's his business account. And he's got his personal account. But they are interlinked. So what we create for them is a value proposal where we give them benefits to actually bank with Standard Bank. So we make it cheaper. If we can help them with the costs that they find is expensive and make it cheaper for them, therefore they can actually benefit off it. A doctor can only do so much.
Yeah.
And that's the question. Can he see more than 20 patients a day properly? We're not sure. But if you have a look into your non-leafy areas, if you look here in Alexander, we've got a clinic there that's seeing 80 patients a day, one doctor. But they've got the right system. They've built a system. So at Standard Bank, what we're doing, we're working with these guys because we want to take that system that they've created and push it into the market where you can see 80 patients a day, where it's only costing you 350 Rand, including your medication. It will start to change, and we'll also bring NHI to the right level. Because the biggest thing about NHI, you've got this huge gap. Very high cost to go see a GP in a leafy area, very low cost to see a GP in a non-leafy area. We've got to get that on the same level.
And I was just thinking as you're talking, I mean, a GP, I'm trying to think what equipment a GP uses. He's got a stethoscope, he's got the basic stuff that's not exorbitant, but when you talk to a dentist, and then you've got it's high capital intensive equipment, because you've got to have an X-ray in your practice, you've got to have all sorts of other equipment. So I imagine people like specialists and dentists and maxillophysios, those guys have got to spend a lot of money on equipment.
That is very expensive. We're seeing now coming into the market, and we actually, they're part of Standard Bank now, where we're doing a kind of an option where we're renting per procedure for dentists.
Oh, wow.
So it's actually, then you're not renting the actual equipment, it's per procedure. It's in the radiology world as well, because those machines are very expensive.
Yes.
We're wanting to see how we're going to take that into the veterinarian world, because you forgot about that. The veterinarian world is so expensive, because there you've got to have the CT scanners, you've got to have everything, and you've also got a retail shop on the back end.
So you guys support vets as well?
Yes, we support anything to do with health, yes. So
wow, that's interesting,
Yeah.
That's very interesting. So, where's the future here? Where is Standard Bank taking healthcare? What initiatives are you going to introduce in? Because just like we've been talking, the industry is evolving. You've got to evolve your products. You've got to be open-minded on the approaches that you take to the healthcare industry. So where are you guys going at Standard Bank with this?
So we are very positive from a Standard Bank point of view, where we're going to take healthcare. And yes, we're basing it on NHI. But we're not looking at the negativity of NHI as a lot of people are. We're saying, how do we actually assist NHI to become NHI? How do we make it possible? How do we make it work? So we're looking at the ground. The ground being the rural areas. How are we going to ensure that there is medical treatment out into, just simple medical treatment out into the rural areas? Who do we support there? So there are different companies that are setting up trailers, they go out into the rural areas, they do a lot of work. Because if you can find the source and stop and fix it right there and then, it stops that mass movement into your urban areas, into your hospitals, where it then gets expensive. One of our greatest projects that we've just done is with the South African Pediatric Dentistry Association, big word. So with the pediatrics, it's your children. We bought them a bus, okay? It's got a mother and child part, and it's got a full dentistry, okay? And we kitted it out, and it goes out on the weekends from Friday to Sunday. We're now sponsoring a bit more so it can go during the week. And what they do, they go into the rural areas and they fix children's teeth.
That's amazing.
Because how can you be successful in the world if you don't have a nice smile?
Like fillings and crooked teeth and all that
everything.
sort of thing.
Yeah, and the young dentists are actually supporting us. They go out of their own free will and they go and help it. So that's also working very well.
Look, you mentioned NHI, and NHI, there is controversy around it, but it's something that we have to make healthcare affordable for everyone.
Yes.
Where does Standard Bank see this going, and the approach, and when will NHI come into effect, and how does Standard Bank see NHI?
So NHI has actually started to come into effect. People don't realize that it's slowly happening. What we understand, what we believe, what we've heard in the market, it will take approximately 10 to 20 years before you start seeing NHI in its full system. It's not tomorrow you can just walk into a private hospital and you don't have to pay. It will change. So what is exciting about it is that it's changing the law at the Health Professional Council of South Africa. They need to change the law to make NHI more feasible. And the first law that they've now worked on, it's coming from last year, and now it's starting to take effect, is that you as a GP, and you went back to the simple person of a GP, he doesn't have to fund himself anymore. All right? It's always been that you have to own your own practice, you have your practice number, and all your claims from discovery, etc., come into your bank account and your practice number. Now, a company can actually employ GPs.
Okay.
They can employ radiologists. They can employ surgeons. So it's getting bigger and bigger, and it's starting to change the law. By forming a company, what you're having is day clinics are starting to be set up. Now, if you've got these day clinics kind of being set up, you've got this emerging market of GPs feeding into that day clinic where you've got the radiologists, where you've got the specialists, etc. And it's now getting more and more of these little things happening around the country. There's one in Simonstown where it's been set up where you've got 8 GPs feeding into, and they're the first to try it, feeding into a hospital there, a public hospital, but now that public hospital it's got the right specialists and it's starting to do well.
Amazing.
So it's the actual discoveries of the world, the momentums, they're the ones that are starting to push it because they see the benefit, because they're pricing them, you won't be paying it, that is coming down. So
the bigger picture is that it's
coming,
moving,
it's
and
moving.
it's coming,
yeah,
and it's positive.
We're very positive.
Look, there will be challenges, of course.
Yes.
There will be, but it's how we overcome those challenges.
We're just looking now, how do we help them? How do we actually become the financial hub for them to use when they form that inner circle?
And I love the idea of that truck that goes to the rural areas. There must be so many more success stories that you're involved in because you really are changing people's lives.
Yes. Yes, we have been able to win over a couple of the larger groups, the hospital groups. That's a very big successful story for us. Like I was saying earlier, we are sitting now with over 18% market share, which is huge. We were at 6% when we started 4 years ago. So it's a large market share of the practitioner world that now we bank. We are growing rapidly, so we're enjoying that. Where our success is going to come from is how do we take on the future? This is the NHI. It's how does Standard Bank be the leaders on getting a process, a platform that we can push into the market.
Brilliant.
And that's what we're building.
What is your advice to healthcare professionals? Because if you look at any company today, you talk about digital innovation, and you got to get smart. You got to look at AI. You got to look at big data analytics. You got to reinvent yourself. And I guess that the healthcare industry is no stranger to this, because we've seen massive transformation happening globally. So what's your advice to healthcare professionals? How do they strengthen their financial resilience? What do they need to do within their practices to stay relevant in this ever-changing world?
Good question. One thing they need to do is stay away from the apps. There are so many apps for these poor doctors.
Yeah.
I mean, whenever I go see a doctor or a group, there's another app that's come out that says this can do it for you, and make you right.
Yes.
The thing is, how do we adapt to the NHI? How are they going to adapt, and how are they going to take their practice at home in the leafy suburb from 20 patients to 80? And that's where we can help them. We've learned the proper systems. We know which companies to go with. There are a lot of companies out there, they're there today, gone tomorrow. Where Standard Bank has got collaboration partners that we work very closely with and can take their practice and actually assist it to get better. Remember, if they're successful, we as a bank are successful.
How do people reach you guys to find out more information?
They can reach us through dropping us an email through healthcare@standardbank.co.za or on the Standard Bank website.
John, an absolute pleasure chatting to you.
Thank you very much
for your
Aki.
time.
Really great.
Amazing stuff that Standard Bank's doing in the healthcare sector. And thank you very, very much. That's John van Kijn for joining us for this section and this interview in What's Next in Banking, coming at you live from Standard Bank.